Hi, this is Juliana Hatfield, and you're listening to Days Gone By on WGBB Freeport.
Welcome back to Days Gone By on this Sunday evening. Now, sometimes, the host of a show gets along with someone, and it's a really great interview, and sometimes you really click. But in this particular instance, I've got someone whose phone is clicking. So before anything else, because everybody's worried that there's something wrong with their radios or that we're going to lose our guest in 5 or 10 seconds, it's cool. We put the clicks into this interview that you're hearing on her telephone just to make it more interesting, just to add a little irritant to make it like the early punk days of the early 80s. So that's why when we're talking and I'm trying to find out all this wonderful information about singer-songwriter Juliana Hatfield, you'll not only hear her, you'll hear the click of her telephone out in Massachusetts. So Juliana, welcome, and welcome to your clicks as well.
Thank you. Yeah, my phone's clicking with you. It must really like you.
There you go. See? And I'm very happy to be part of your clique, of your crowd, as it were. Yeah, let's begin with a pun, and it's downhill from there, ladies and gentlemen. So, Juliana, really, honestly, welcome to the neighborhood. It's a pleasure to have you here, and
thank you.
I like so much of your music. So one of the things I like to do is to start now and work our ways backwards. So, what is the latest? You do have a pretty new album out. Am I correct? I call them albums. Shows you my age.
I call them albums too. It's an album's worth of songs. So no matter what format it's on, it still is an album worth of songs. And
this new album worth of songs is called?
It's called How to Walk Away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being officially released in August.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so what else do you want to know about it?
Well, you've done a few albums over the years. I mean, you were part of the Blake Babies, and then you had the Juliana Hatfield 3, and then essentially you've been a solo artist for about 2 decades now. So how do you know when you've got an album's worth of stuff?
Well, in the past, I would know when I had enough songs to make an album. Once I had written, 12 songs or so, I would know that could be an album. But with the new album, I wrote a lot more songs than I needed to, and then I worked with my producer, Andy Chase, my new producer.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of weeded through everything, and he chose the songs that he thought would make the most cohesive and fantastic album, and so he had a lot to do with the actual song choices of this album.
So you learned to trust your producer a lot, or did you have fights about?
I learned to trust this producer. It was a really great working relationship. I think I trusted him more than I've ever trusted a producer, and he just has very impeccable taste and impeccable instincts, and put total faith in him, total trust, and I think he did all the right things.
It's funny because I'm literally just now reading the book by Dean Wareham of Galaxy 500. He's put out a autobiography, and today I was just reading about the part where he was saying towards the third and last album of Galaxy, it was like the first 2 albums were great, and then that third one, you always know when you're on a fairly bigger label because you know you have an album's worth of material when the label says you do, and you have to go in and fulfill your contract. And he knew that third album wasn't as good as the others because they went in not yet ready with enough material, but they were sort of forced to because they needed the money.
Right. Well, I've never been forced into the studio. I think people are always trying to keep me out of the studio. I write so many songs, and I just churn out the albums, and so that was never a problem for me.
Well, when did you start writing songs? How old were you?
I wrote my first song when I was 9 years old. I remember it distinctly. I wrote 2 songs at the age of 9, and then I sort of put songwriting on the back burner until I was in high school, and then I started really writing. Well, I started writing high school poetry, angsty teenage poetry, and then I started setting that to music. And
so you were a bell jar kind of a girl?
Yeah, definitely. And then those early teenage songs became some of the first Blake Baby songs.
I do have to ask, do you remember what your songs were when you were 9?
Yeah, well, I remember there was this one song. I remember how it went. It didn't really have a title. It went like this. It went, remember the night that we met on a sandy beach. The sky was all covered with stars. You asked me my name, and I knew that those simple words would mean that this summer was ours. We spent the summer together. It went on like that.
You wrote that when you were 9?
I did, yeah.
You should record that now. I'm serious.
That was a show tune.
That's a Leslie Gore kind of a song right there.
Right? I know.
Oh my gosh. I wasn't writing that stuff when I was, whoa. Well, no wonder you became a professional composer and lyricist. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
You should get that song out of the drawer. I'm serious. So again, how did the Blake Babies take shape?
Well, I was attending the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I was kind of wanting to form a band. That's why I went to Berklee. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really having any luck meeting anyone. I wasn't really connecting with anyone. And then one day, one night, someone knocked on my dorm room door. And it was this guy and this girl named John and Frida. And they asked me if I wanted to come and jam with them. And I did. And that was the beginning of the Blake Babies. It was just they sort of found me, and it's from the beginning, and we just clicked, and it was great from the beginning.
The way bands tend to work, especially when people are so young and they get together and they're fresh and they're new. And again, I guess I'm being a little overly influenced by the story of Galaxy 500 right now because I'm reading that book. But why aren't the Blake Babies still together today?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One of which is just, it's something that's hard to explain. It's like, it felt, after a certain number of years, it felt that the Blake Babies had done everything we needed to do. It just sort of felt like it was time to move on. And I wanted to explore other ways of writing and playing with other people. I just felt like we did everything that we could do as a band, and there were other things. John and Frida both were going to move back to Indiana, where they came from, and I was going to stay in Boston. And
at that point, again, you wanted to move on and do other things. Did you feel, because you ended up forming the trio, but were you not ready to totally go completely solo, or the fact that you had your name as the name of the band, you were already like, okay, it's my gig, it's my thing?
Yeah, I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be known as I wanted to try to, make my name as a solo artist. That's why I put my name on it. But I didn't. But I wanted to play with my friends. I didn't want to just have, hire pros. I wanted to actually be hanging around with my buddies, and that was the Juliana Hatfield 3.
Right.
A couple of my buddies from Boston. But yeah, I wanted to kind of do my own thing. I wanted to have more, I guess I wanted to be more of a leader and have more control over the music. I mean, I loved being a Blake Baby. It was great. It was perfect at the time. And I learned so much, and I still love John and Frida, and we're still friends.
And are you still friends with the folks of the Juliana Hatfield 3?
I don't talk to Dean, the bass player, all that much, but I definitely still friends with Todd, the drummer. Yeah, I talked to Todd yesterday, I think.
Oh, cool.
He's in LA now.
Do you think that the critics, the rock critics, got your work all the way through, or did you just sometimes read the reviews and go like, what the hell are they talking about, or what was the relationship there? Well,
I had and still have a very a complicated relationship to my reviewers and certain listeners. I definitely feel a lot of the time that people aren't getting it, or that they're just not really paying attention, or they're not listening hard enough.
I'm sorry, yeah.
But I don't really worry about it so much, because I know that there are people out there that really do get it, and it's really good to know that.
But I'm thinking, is there a particular album or song that you really felt was understood or underrated, and you wish people would just kind of go back and listen again and really...
Well, yeah, I think everything I've done has been way underrated. I think I'm a genius, and the world just doesn't know it yet. But they will one day.
One day they will. We're talking with Juliana Hatfield, who was described by Brett Milano in his book, The Sound of Our Town, A History of Boston Rock and Roll. Quote, she was a willowy beauty with charming shyness and a slightly tragic air. Does that still describe you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Physically, and also the demeanor,
I'm what is it? A charming shyness? Well, I don't know if I'm charmingly shy. I'm pathologically shy.
Really?
And I've got a slightly tragic air, I guess. I think I was born with that.
Well, first of all, let's start with the shyness, though. I mean, that's an interesting thing to be if you're going to be fronting first a rock band and then a solo act. I mean, was that a specific thing in your head, like, I am so shy, and therefore I'm going to get out there with a guitar and put a mic in front of my face, and the spotlight's going to hit me, and...
Well, it wasn't something that I consciously thought about, that I consciously decided to do, because if I did, I would have realized it didn't make any sense. But I think when I look back on the path I took, I think it does make sense for someone who's shy to become a performer, or to become a songwriter, or a singer, because it's a way, writing songs and singing is a way to communicate with people. And I always felt that I had difficulty talking to people and communicating to them, and just sort of being among people. And making music was a way for me to be among people, but not to actually have to talk, or to, I could play songs and with people and for people, and that was a way for me to be close to people.
Did you have a good childhood, a difficult childhood? Did you get along with your folks?
My family was kind of a normal, dysfunctional family. Ups and downs. My parents divorced when I was little, and
that
was rough, but typical. Yeah, my father passed away about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And he moved out when my parents got divorced, so I never was really close to him, because he wasn't really, he didn't live with me for many years. But yeah, my mother and I, we get along, and she's great.
Okay, that's cool. And just you try and figure out where the shyness and the personality stuff came from. Was your mom supportive?
Are you psychoanalyzing me?
Okay. Well, why not? Well,
they were great. They were great in that they never told me what I should do. They never told me what they wanted me to do. They let me decide for myself what was right for me, and they always were very supportive. They came to my early gigs. And,
cool.
And both of them were amateur musicians themselves.
Oh.
And
did they play a lot of music at home, and did they have big record collections and stuff that you listened to?
Not such big record collections, but they were more. There was a big grand piano, Chickering grand piano in the house, and my mother liked to play a lot of classical music, and my father liked to play like Scott Joplin ragtime type stuff.
And oddly enough, you're known as a guitarist.
Well, people don't know that I guess they don't know that I started out on piano. I studied piano all the way up, and through college I was admitted into Berklee as a piano student.
Oh.
And then once I got into Berklee, I sort of gave up the piano forever and switched over to the voice department. started studying voice and playing guitar.
And did the things that you learned in Berkeley, are there things that you remember today, like when you go on stage or in a recording studio? Do you remember stuff that teachers told you?
You know, the one thing I really remember the most from Berkeley.
What's that?
The one thing they taught me is you can't copyright a title. And I thought that was really great information. You know, I could title my new album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band if I wanted to.
So yeah, you could call the song "Hey Jude." Doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, oh well, yeah.
You know, the replacement album "Let It Be."
All those years at Berkeley, and that's what you remember.
That's what I took away from it.
You probably should have gone into copyright law. Make more money, I guess. So let's get to the tragic air part. Because when people hear about your kind of thing where you were part of the Blake Babies and you know, the trio and going through the 80s and the people that you worked with and maybe having not such an easy time of it in the music business, the assumption, even my assumption was, drugs. Must have lost 10, 15 years to drugs. Because that's what happens to...
You thought that about me?
Well, no, I mean, yeah, because you think that about everybody of that era. I remember hearing an interview with Richard Butler of the Psychedelic Furs, who, by the way...
Who sings on my new album.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes, he does. He has a cameo on... What song is that?
It's called This Lonely Love.
On This Lonely Love. I talk about great voices. I mean, iconic voices of the 1980s. Richard Butler.
Totally.
And he was talking to Jonesy, Glenn Jones. And he was telling him that... It never occurred to me, like, that they would be druggies, per se. Because they were always too smart, and they made such great music, and they never seemed to look haggard and like heroin addicts or anything like that. But they said, no, you know, they were doing this show and then getting in the van and going there, and they were just popping as many pills as they had to stay awake. And then, of course, when you have all these pills to stay awake, you need these pills to go to sleep.
Right.
And of course, you're also drinking because you're having beers and everything. And it never got too out of hand with them. But they were a band I would never have figured would have a problem with it.
Well,
so,
you know,
yeah.
I just assume that everyone in bands is doing something.
Right.
But, and I think that I'm the only person who's ever been in a band who never did drugs or drank to excess. I think I'm the only one. I was like the freak who didn't do drugs, and everyone else did.
And yet, from your persona, I guess it's totally wrong to judge like that. One would probably have assumed, oh, yeah, well, she must have done some heroin.
Well, that's really interesting. I didn't realize it. Well, yeah, I guess people have ideas about people they don't know, and I can see how I kind of look, I didn't brush my hair all the time, I was kind of skinny, I guess I kind of looked like a junkie. Right,
and the heroin chic thing came along in the 90s, and you almost fit.
And I never was,
good.
I was always afraid of drugs, and, I mean, that's just the truth, I was never drawn to drugs, really, at all, ever.
By the way, you're talking to someone who never had a puff of a marijuana cigarette, so, I mean, I've done heroin. No, I'm taking it.
You've never tried marijuana?
No, I'm really kind of straight-laced, kind of...
No, I'm like that, too. I mean, I smoked pot, but I don't really like it. But that's about the only drug I've ever done.
But the thing was, what that maybe people didn't know, and that what you've been pretty upfront about, is that you went through, since we were talking about the slightly tragic air, you did battle, on some level, depression.
Yeah, I had a big problem with that.
Well, that kind of masks, that may look like a heroin problem from the outside. When did that start?
It dogged me for years. It started... I don't know, maybe it started in high school. I can't remember, but it got really bad in my 20s, and I was pretty miserable all through my 20s, really.
Were you getting help at that point? Were you seeing something?
No, not until, I think when I was in my late 20s, I finally had this dangerous moment where I almost jumped out of a window. I started to, fixate on jumping out of a window, and I kept saying, I'm going to do it today, and then at some point I realized that my thinking was really diseased, like there was something really wrong with.
Especially since the window was closed at the time,
yeah,
so that would have really hurt. Yeah,
I know.
Thank you very much.
So I had this moment of clarity where I thought there's something really wrong with my brain. I need to get some medical help, and so that started my long healing process. And the first thing I did was I canceled the European tour that I was supposed to do, and that was sort of the beginning of the whole end of my
the depression. How long ago was that?
That was like in the mid-90s, I think.
Okay.
And so I'm a lot less miserable than I was.
Well, hey, I wish I could say that.
Yeah.
I'm walking poster boy for misery, but no. But so are you basically, as you said, a lot less miserable? Are you a happy person or is that not a possible thing?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. And I assume you're still in therapy on some level.
Oh, yeah.
And that continue. Are you on any medications?
Nope, none.
Cool. Way cool. Yeah. So you cope with it through that kind of processing.
I was on medication for a while, but
okay.
But I used it as a tool to get my head away from the edge, and then I just did a lot of things, like got some cognitive therapy, and I got a puppy.
Oh.
And I just, I worked really hard, and I'm still working really hard, but I try to avoid drugs.
Oh, well, yeah.
No one knows the long-term effects of those drugs yet, and I didn't want to, be a guinea pig.
Do you think your songwriting changed as you became more stable?
Well, it's hard to say. I think my songwriting has changed a bit, but it's hard to say if it's just because of the passage of time, or if it's just a little maturity, or if it's because I'm less depressed. It's hard to say. It's really hard for me to listen to the Blake Babies music because it's so, to me, it's just too intense. It's like listening to an open wound. And I can't even listen to it because I just can't believe some of the things that were coming out of me. Just these horrible.
And you couldn't play them now. You couldn't even go back there and do them. Wow. One of the things that you're quoted as saying is your songs are very autobiographical, although I do recognize that whenever I'm writing about myself, I am, in a sense, writing about or for everyone else. I know that other people are out there just like me.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm like everybody else. Everybody has the same feelings. Everyone feels sad and angry and happy and, grief-stricken and joyful and all. There's not that many emotions that a person can have, and we all have them,
Who are some of the other people that you listen to? Who are some of the songwriters who are influencing you either now or in recent times?
Well, I'm listening to less and less music lately. It's weird. I'm kind of going through a no music phase right now.
Okay.
But in the early days, in my formative years, it was Paul Westerberg, The Replacements, was a big influence on me, and early REM, like the first EP.
Oh, wow.
First album, and X from Los Angeles.
Were you coming down to the clubs and going to New York and CBGBs and all those kinds of things?
No, when I was in the early years, I was in Boston.
Right.
So, and I was too young, really. I was sneaking into the clubs to see Replacements. I was underage.
Can you remember a Replacement show where they were wearing, funny things on their heads and unrecognized?
Well, I think I saw one show where Bob Stinson came out with, he had this light green ruffled tuxedo shirt, and then he had light green sheer see-through stockings and nothing else.
Oh, okay.
And then,
by the way, that's exactly what I'm wearing now. That's the scariest part. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And Paul Westerberg was just he was so stylish. He always looked so good, even when he was just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And
Do you think that's part of a necessary part of rock and roll, the look, the style of it?
Well, I don't like it when people look like they put any effort into it. It's good when people just sort of have this effortless thing that you know, it's like some people just look cool and you can't really make it happen. It's you're either born with it or you're not.
Oh, I remember a few years ago, I mean within the last 10 years, went to see the Pretenders. A friend had a spare ticket to see the Pretenders at Roseland in New York. And, you know, we're waiting for the show to begin. Everybody's milling around. There's no seats in the damn place. You're just standing around. And then, you know, band saunters out and the lights change a little bit. And within 10 seconds, there's Chrissy Hind, white T-shirt, jeans, guitar, far away.
That's all you need.
Sexiest thing in the whole damn... I mean, she was probably, you know, almost 50 at that point. Well, or whatever she was at that point. But I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, she's the coolest. And if you're cool, you don't really need all the other stuff. You just need yourself. You know, you need to just put your guitar on yourself, get in the spotlight, and then you're fabulous. Hi, this is Juliana Hatfield. I'll be playing at Joe's Pub in New York City on May 21st, and you're listening to Dave's Gone By on WGBB Freeport.
We have a few more minutes with the wonderful and delightful Juliana Hatfield, and so much I want to ask her and talk about and tell her. But the one story I most really want to tell you, because it's I guess, my favorite song of yours, and I would love to know the genesis of it. There's another show I mentioned earlier in the conversation, WFMU, and there was a fellow on there named Erwin Schusid. I'm sure you're familiar with him and probably even interviewed by him. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, I don't know, it's perverse of my nature, but I go through that station and some others because I wonder what people were doing on the air on 9/11 and the days afterwards.
Oh.
I'm fascinated by the way they reacted to it and how people cope when something crazy like that is happening, and also in the aftershock. Uh-huh. Are they going to be nuts? Are they going to be surprisingly normal and calm? Or what's the range in between? Mm-hmm. And Erwin was on the day after. He was on November 12th, 2001.
September 12th.
I'm sorry. Yes, forgive me, September 12th. And he was playing music and obviously didn't know... he knew that they couldn't be a news station. It wouldn't be the place where people would turn to know what's the latest going on in New York and around the place. And he was trying to filter information about where to give blood and stuff. But he was also playing music, which is what he normally did. And he played your song called Until Tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And then he announced it by saying it was one of the saddest songs he'd ever heard.
Wow.
And when you connect it certainly to that day, it's whoa. But the song was written like a year or two beforehand. I'm wondering where that song came from.
Well, that song was about a friend of mine who drowned. I wrote it about Jeff Buckley.
Oh my gosh.
I think, if I remember right. No, wait, I want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, I think you wait until tomorrow. Yeah, I think I wrote it about Jeff.
So I didn't realize you were friends with him. It's funny.
We toured together, and I knew him when I was living in New York. I met him, and we became friends. Hi, this is Juliana Hatfield. I've got a new album out called How to Walk Away, and you are listening to Dave's Gone By on WGBB Freeport.
Is it a small community? Is it like this small group in a certain way where you all eventually know each other?
Every time I meet someone, a musician, he usually knows people that I know, and it's like whenever I meet a new musician, it's like meeting someone that's already sort of familiar, because
You talk the same language. There's already a commonality.
Yeah, we've been to the same places, we've driven the same roads, played the same clubs, we have the same experience, and what we do for a living, it's kind of a weird existence, and it's not the straight world, and so it's like we belong to this sort of club, and there's like a built-in camaraderie.
Now let's, for just a little bit longer that we have with the wonderful Juliana Hatfield, I'm a little curious about the music business and the way it's changed. You have set up your own label.
Yeah.
Which is now everybody's doing it. I mean, when people were doing it 5-10 years ago, it was one thing. But now, I mean, is it better, worse, just plain different? I mean, everybody used to complain about, the major labels, and they're stealing from us, and they're not promoting us, and, everything's going up the executives' noses.
Right.
So, okay, now everybody's running their own thing and putting stuff on the internet and iTunes and their own labels. It's better, worse, what?
Well, I always look at every situation I try to look at every situation from every perspective, and so every cup is half full and half empty. Like I see it as half empty and half full at the same time.
Okay.
So basically what I'm saying is, there are good things and bad things about being on a major label. Same with being on an indie label. And now having my own label, it's good and it's bad. I mean, it's a whole lot more work for me. I have to do all kinds of work that I never had to do before, which takes away from my music making. There's I have to spend a lot of hours doing, accounting and going to the post office and speaking to designers and I just basically have to run this business, which I never was trained in. I had to learn how to do all this stuff. But it's great because it's just great to have the knowledge and to know exactly how many records are being sold, know that I'm getting paid. But there's, it's good and bad. It's like
Are you, and none of my business about the facts and figures, but you make a living. You've been able to support yourself as a musician and an artist.
I have been all this time, but, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue to make a living. People always say that the internet age is so great because artists can bypass the record companies and bring their music directly to the people, but, yeah, that's great, but if no one is paying for it, then the musicians aren't going to be able to continue to create the music because it costs money to make recordings, and to hire a publicist and all this, it still costs money to produce music.
Sure.
And if people aren't going to pay the musicians, I mean, there's some people are still paying for music, but
but it's one thing also for Radiohead to leak an album out and let everybody pay what they want.
Well, they're millionaires, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And
I'm not a millionaire, and so I have to be really careful about money, and there could come a time in the near future that I just can't afford to make another record.
Well, you might want to do some of the people that I mentioned who have been on the show, like Jill Sabule and Issa, formerly known as Jane Siberry. I mean, they raise up funds through their websites where they're literally, Sabule is really cool about this. I mean, she'll say, hey, if you give this much money, I'll put you on the credits. And if you raise,
but I don't want to be asking my fans for money. I don't want to be a fundraiser for myself.
Issa felt weird about that too.
I just don't want to do it. I hate that money is even involved now, but now that we have to run our own businesses and manage our own, labels, we have to think about money.
Well, what about touring? Is that a good thing, or is that normally just...
It's not a big moneymaker for me. At this point, it's hard for me to make money on the road. I mean, I'm a struggling musician. I'm a struggling young musician, again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good though. It's great that I've been able to start the label and that I have this freedom to do it without any. I don't have any financial backers or anything. It's just all me and my savings, and I hope I can keep it going.
Well, certainly, I hope so too. First of all, because you've got an autobiography apparently coming out next year.
Yeah.
So that's you know what the title is going to be on that?
I don't know yet. We're still throwing ideas around.
Cool. Well, obviously, you certainly have a lot to tell and talk about. I think we've only scratched the surface, but we haven't done any of the personal stuff. Like, if you were never married, I assume, or are you in a relationshipy thingy or not, or what? Where are you at?
I'm not married. Never been married. No plans to ever get married.
Okay.
But you know, I'm open to whatever. I'm single at the moment.
Is that good? Is that bad? Is it just what it is?
It is what it is. It's great. I mean, I'm a very, very independent person who needs a lot of solitude. And so being alone is my natural state. I'm very comfortable being alone.
Wow. That's a pretty neat way to be. You know, I sometimes feel like that. I don't think my wife would be happy about that. But
Don't tell her that.
Pretty good way to be. Anyway, it has been a wonderful way to be spending time for this hour with Juliana Hatfield. If there's one piece of advice that you would give to up-and-coming people who want to be making music their lives, or at least part of their lives, what would it be?
Well, the one thing that I always tell people who ask me for advice is use floss. Take care of your teeth and don't neglect the dental floss, because I've seen a lot of musicians get into middle age and their teeth just fall apart. You gotta take care of your teeth. I'm totally serious.
Oh, okay. And also, teeth are the gateway, the bacteria, to all sorts of other problems. If you're
and dental floss is really important in your long-term dental health, and I'm completely serious.
Well, speaking of which, though,
a lot of musicians don't have health insurance, and when they start to need the root canals, they can't afford them.
Well, even with teeth and everything else, I mean, a lot of musicians have had to have benefit fundraiser things because they never could afford health insurance basic. And people like Alejandro Escovedo, and Victoria Williams, going way back when she first discovered that she had MS. You at least have some kind of health insurance?
I do have health insurance, yeah. I pay for my own health insurance.
Good. Well,
I always try to be careful about that. It's one expense that I feel like it's really worth it for me.
Because really, what we most want, aside from your continuing to make wonderful music, is to stay healthy and less miserable.
Well, yeah, we should all take care of ourselves and exercise and eat healthy foods. It's good. Make the world a better place if everyone did that.
Well, making the world a better place with her music and her attitude. Juliana Hatfield, thank you so much for being in the neighborhood.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.